If there is a faction in Fallout that does diplomacy the best, it would have to be the NCR. The new California Republic is built on foundations of democracy, liberty, and rule of law, seeking to espouse these pre-war values in the modern age, and is one of the few post-war nations to employ embassies and consulates in the territory of other factions. As such, their interactions with other factions in the setting of Fallout is one of the most interesting plot points in many of the game's settings, as while some view them as altruistic and kind, others view them as selfish and idealistic. So let's take a look at what each faction thinks of the NCR. The Brotherhood's relationship with the NCR is probably the most dynamic within the Fallout setting, not only from the complex relationship they've held as both allies and enemies, but the effect that said relationship has had to shape the Wasteland and games as we know it. In the early days of the NCR's development, the Brotherhood of Steel had a somewhat warm relationship to the growing nation. The NCR was officially voted into existence in 2189 as a federation of 5 states, with one of these states named Maxon, after the Brotherhood's founder Roger Maxon. Terminal records found in the Citadel indicate that the state of Maxon was built in proximity to the Lost Hills Bunker, the headquarters of the Brotherhood's High Command, with the fledgling state enjoying the protection provided by the Brotherhood. One of the other states of the NCR, the Hub, had built strong economic ties to the Brotherhood before they'd even been incorporated into the Republic, as caravans plied the Brotherhood bunkers as early as 2150. As late as 2241, Brotherhood outposts can be found within the capital of the NCR, Shady Sands. Other similar outposts were stated to be located within San Francisco and the Den, seeming to act as a form of consulate or embassy for Brotherhood personnel within the NCR. The two groups even joined forces against their shared enemy, the Enclave, to drive them from the West Coast. However cordial they may have initially been, relations between the two groups began to sour once the Republic's ambition clashed with the Brotherhood's staunch ideals. See, the Brotherhood loved technology and see it as their mission to safeguard technology and keep it out of the hands of common folk in order to avoid another global Armageddon. And while it is a noble goal in principle, in practice it's far more annoying. The Brotherhood viewed the people of the NCR as irresponsible with their growing usage of tech, both military and energy. As such, they sought to wrest it away from the NCR government, leading to an outbreak of war between the two groups. The wars between the Brotherhood of Steel and the NCR have shaped much of the history of both groups, and it technically continues to the most present day in the Fallout timeline. Taking place initially within the NCR itself, the Brotherhood reigned supreme with their advanced weaponry and power armor, until the NCR basically buried them underneath a mountain of their soldiers. The tide swung in favour of the NCR, to the point that, after a further loss in the Mojave region, the Brotherhood basically just retreated into their bunkers, while the NCR dominated the landscape. However, the pendulum swung back in favour of the Brotherhood in more recent years, after the fall of Shady Sands. The next chapter of the war was seen with the Brotherhood of Steel assaulting the NCR remnants at Griffith Observatory in order to take control of the cold fusion reactor. Nobly, to keep this technology out of the hands of their lessers, but selfishly to take control of the most powerful energy source seen in the post-war world. From what we see at the present time, the Brotherhood has succeeded in essentially wiping the NCR off the map, not only eliminating their forces, but also laying claim to previously NCR settlements such as Philly, with Elder Quintus declaring their goal to lay claim to the West Coast for themselves. Ultimately, the Brotherhood viewed the NCR similar to how they viewed most Wastelanders, as irresponsible children who can't be trusted to use technology. However, there was also a layer of insecurity to the NCR's perceived power. The Brotherhood thought very highly of themselves. However, as Mr. House stated, ideological purity and shiny power armor don't count for much when you're outnumbered 15 to 1. And as such, this dislike and insecurity turned to outright hatred, as the war between the two groups was technically the longest continual war in the post-war universe. Mr. House and New Vegas itself have a unique and complex opinion of the NCR, seeing them simultaneously as their greatest threat, but also somewhat essential to their long-term goals. As a short prehistory, Republic scouts had located the pre-war ruins of Vegas and the fully operational resource of Hoover Dam. However, when their military forces entered the region, they found a confederation of tribals and Securitrons occupying both locations under the stewardship of Mr. House. This show of force from the city-state, named the Free Economic Zone of New Vegas, led to the NCR choosing to negotiate rather than annex the region outright. And from this, the Treaty of New Vegas was born, a multi-point document outlining the bilateral relations of the two parties. With the sovereignty of New Vegas recognised by the NCR, and operation protection and maintenance of Hoover Dam given to the NCR, who were permitted to send 95% of its electricity and water back to the Republic, with the remaining 5% given to New Vegas free of charge. The treaty worked for both parties, although one could say that the House always wins. With little effort on his part, a foreign power brought Hoover Dam to full power, enabling him to reap its benefits, while the NCR's citizens journeyed to the region to spend their money. Mr. House's opinion on the NCR is complex, with a distinction made between its citizens and its leaders. He considers the NCR citizens to be a society of customers, desperate to experience comfort, ease and luxury in a chaotic world. With the inflow of tourists to the region fueling his planned goal of restarting humanity on another planet, he views them as an important component of this plan, and makes every effort to make their stay in New Vegas as comfortable as possible, so long as they have the caps to pay for it. His opinion on the NCR leaders, however, is much less favourable. House states that he would have absolutely no problem with the NCR if it weren't for the fact that they were scheming to annex New Vegas as their sixth state, which is absolutely true. He knows that the only reason the NCR's leaders have not created some reason to forcibly take the Strip over is due to the position of Caesar's Legion on the other side of the Colorado River. As such, he views their politicians as corrupt bureaucrats, while its military leaders suffer from a sense of tunnel vision for strategy and battle. He acknowledges that their society based on the values of the democratic pre-war United States is a step towards a return to civilization, but he doesn't consider them a nation that is built to last. In his words, the fate of democracies can be seen out the window. That said, of all the possible factions in the wasteland, the NCR is the one that Mr. House at least wishes to remain in existence. He outright hates the Brotherhood of Steel, seeing them as ridiculous cosplayers that need to be destroyed. He derides the Legion as barbarian Luddites who seek to make slavery the future of mankind. The NCR at the very least can be reasoned with, and most importantly for Mr. House, they can be utilised for his own purposes. The Great Khans and the NCR have a long and sordid history stemming from both groups' original origins in Vault 15. The first incarnation, known as the Khans, kidnapped Tandy, a teenager who would one day become the president of the NCR. The second incarnation, known as the New Khans, were dedicated to the destruction of the NCR, but were then destroyed themselves, and the survivors named themselves the Great Khans and headed out to the Mojave Wasteland to forge a new life. But when the Republic entered the region, old tempers flared up again. The Great Khans had a hostile relationship from the start, raiding the growing NCR civilian population. However, this all came to a head when the NCR army tracked the Great Khans to their base of operations in Bitter Springs, and while the main army assaulted the soldiers of the camp, first recon snipers were positioned on a nearby ridge to watch for flanking soldiers. However, the pathway the ridge covered was instead used for non-combatants such as women, children, and the elderly. But despite this, those troops were ordered to shoot until they were out of ammo, leading to a massacre. The NCR were therefore victorious in the war against the Great Khans. However, the murder of the women and children of the group did not improve the diplomatic relationships of the two. Although a stalemate was declared, with the NCR providing medical aid and support to the Great Khans to relocate to Red Rock Canyon, the Great Khans outright hate the NCR. And this hatred has even led to their leader declaring for Caesar's Legion in the upcoming Second Battle of Hoover Dam. The further relations between the two groups can be influenced by player actions. The Courier can promote animosity between the NCR and the Great Khans by siding the Khans with the Legion. However, another path does exist that allows the tightening of bonds between the two foes. As although Papa Khan outright hates the NCR, his successors believe that his hatred of the Republic has poisoned his mind. And if Papa Khan is to fall in battle, his second-in-command Regis can be advised to support an alliance between the Great Khans and the NCR. If taken, the Great Khans will fight alongside their former foes against the Legion at Hoover Dam. But despite their sacrifice and willingness to bury the hatchet, the NCR aren't as accommodating to the Great Khans. Colonel Moore directly states that they can use the Khans as cannon fodder during the battle, as well as replace the new leader if they become a problem. Therefore, the Great Khans don't like the NCR. There are literally centuries of history between the two groups, all of it built on bad blood. And even in the event that the Great Khans can be convinced to extend an olive branch to the NCR and help them in their battle, The post-game slides in an NCR Khan alliance show that the Republic has a lack of will to honour their debts. Now, obviously, the Institute, Railroad and Minutemen would not know of the NCR's existence, considering they're exclusively located on the West Coast. As such, it's highly unlikely for them to have any opinion on the nation at all. But the interesting point, however, is that the Institute's agent Conrad Kellogg was a citizen of the NCR. Flashbacks from his childhood memories show him listening to the radio broadcast announcing the formation of the new California Republic, and him pondering that his teacher states they would be living in a society much like the old world. However, his adult self does state that, "I wanted to find somewhere out from under the thumb of the NCR and all their rules," so he evidently does not have a positive opinion on the faction. Now, the Enclave have a low opinion of the NCR. Surprise, surprise, but this is basically because their entire relationship has been built on conflict since the start. In their bid to create a virus to eliminate all mutants, or merely surface-dwelling humans that weren't the Enclave, the Enclave launched attacks on settlements in the new California Republic to abduct residents purely for the purpose of experimentation, while others were pressed into slavery. Even when the Enclave engaged in trade with residents of New Reno, this was not the basis of a conductive relationship. President Dick Richardson stated the hope that if the mutant mobsters use our guns to kill each other, it just saves us the trouble. Basically, from the outset, the Enclave viewed the NCR and its residents much the same as regular wastelanders, as mutants. Maybe more civilized than most, but still mutants. Their attitudes changed, however, after the destruction of their main HQ, the oil rig, and the consequent decision by the NCR to launch an attack on the remaining base at Navarro. Most Enclave forces had fled by that point, but the remainder were slaughtered and their base sacked, hardening opinions towards the NCR. However, as with all factions, different opinions of the NCR can stem from different people. Judah Krieger, an ex-Enclave officer, stated that the NCR didn't seem like it was going to be around for that long, so it was just their duty to civilize things. Cannibal Johnson, another ex-Enclave soldier, actually likes the NCR, and refuses to participate with the rest of his squad if they're forced to fight against them at Hoover Dam. This may just be a gameplay mechanic, but he'll even turn on the player themselves in the event that they attack General Oliver. On the other hand, Orion Marino hates the NCR with a passion, to the point that he'll side with Caesar's Legion in order to fight against the NCR once again. Ultimately, the Enclave doesn't like the NCR, but they don't really like anyone. All other groups on the wasteland are basically mutants in their eyes. The NCR just has the distinction to them of technically being the group that forced them out of the West Coast and made them retreat all the way to the east. The followers of the Apocalypse and the NCR's growth and development were directly entwined to one another, and once upon a time, the followers had a very high opinion of the NCR. Forming within the Boneyard, the followers had initially helped the NCR in the form of education, medicine, and humanitarian efforts, while the followers themselves were able to carry out this mission under the protection of the NCR. However, this symbiosis began to falter once disagreements arose between the NCR's foreign policy, particularly in the Mojave campaign. As the NCR entered the Mojave, the followers followed, as they do. However, the NCR entered the region with imperialist ambitions of annexing the communities of the wasteland, which began to alienate the anarchic followers, who believed in the right of self-determination. Given their view that the NCR was interested only in projecting their own power and wealth at the cost of the lives of the people of the waste, the followers came to view themselves as the janitors of the NCR. Essentially, the NCR comes through a region like a wrecking ball, and the followers come through later with brooms. As such, officially the followers split ties with the NCR in 2275, which led to a further diminished view as many of their number left to start the Office of Science and Industry in the NCR, led astray by the big budgets and military projects of the NCR. Many of the followers will speak of the new California Republic somewhat disdainfully, and yet they do not see them outright as an enemy. Julie Farkas is initially reluctant to help them in the Battle of Hoover Dam, ostensibly due to how the NCR treats its own soldiers, but can be convinced to assist them. Her close relationship with Major Kieran of the NCR also helps the people of Freeside, and Ignacio Rivieras is permitted to work alongside the NCR at Helios 1, although he technically does work to stop the superweapon from falling under their control. Basically, the followers' opinion of the NCR is somewhat complex. The history between the two groups keeps relations a little bit warm, despite the fact that a capitalistic imperialist nation like the NCR is kind of the opposite of the anarchic humanitarian followers. It's basically like when you had a really close friend from primary school who went down a completely different path once you guys grew up. There's still a lot of love there from your shared history, even if you now have nothing in common. Now, if there's a faction that thinks the least highly of the NCR, it would be Caesar's Legion. And understandably so. The two groups have been locked in a violent war for close to a decade. Although the Legion is a nation of hundreds of thousands of people, its viewpoint on the NCR comes basically from its self-named dictator Caesar, who was ironically born as a citizen of the new California Republic. Caesar does view the NCR as the most powerful enemy his nation has ever fought, but he hates the NCR with all his being. To him, the NCR is a bloated, corrupt nation that is doomed to fail, and merely a loose conglomerate of individuals looking out only for themselves. He views its championing of democracy to be its weakness, making the case that when he was born into the NCR, he was taught to venerate President Tandy, who served for 52 years. Prior to this, her father Aradesh also served in office as its first president. Caesar states that the nation was essentially a monarchy from the start, and once true democracy could take place after Tandy died, the nation began to falter. In his delusions of grandeur, he views the NCR as the corrupt Roman Senate, and he and his legion as the historical Julius Caesar, who will cross the Rubicon, oust the bureaucrats, and transform it into a mighty military dictatorship. Caesar's views on the NCR are fairly nuanced, as he understands the nature of its people, its governance and military, both from being a former citizen and the fact that he's quite well educated. His legion have formed the view on the NCR from his teachings, however with a tinge of legion flair. For example, legion troops refer to the NCR citizens as profligates, who hold themselves to be civilized when in fact they're corrupt and self-interested. They view the NCR's reliance on firearms, bombs and ordnance to be a cowardly way to fight, believing that true battle is done up close and personal. More misogynistic legion members despise the fact that the NCR permits its women to fight in their army. Even intelligent, well-travelled Legion members such as Ulysses still disparage the NCR, with Ulysses comparing its symbol of a two-headed bear to be a metaphor for the nation, one that is being pulled in two directions at the same time without any real purpose. In the entire NCR, the only members who gain somewhat of respect from any of the Legion are the NCR Rangers and their chief Hanlon. Due to their exceptional combat prowess, the Rangers are seen as the most formidable foes, worthy of respect, with Lucius stating that without the Rangers, the NCR is nothing. Hanlon is even permitted a quick and painless death by beheading in a Legion ending, out of respect for his cunning and tenacity. Ultimately, the Legion is the faction that hates the NCR the most out of anyone, essentially because in terms of post-war factions, they couldn't be any more different from one another. Many factions hate the NCR already, but the ones that did like them once upon a time no longer do. Under President Tandy, the NCR experienced what we considered a veritable golden age, as although being an expansionist society under her, the NCR was able to accrue land, settlements, and territory through acts of mostly genuine goodwill. Wastelanders would look upon the lives NCR citizens experienced, or had a raider or wasteland threat solved by the new California Republic, and wished to join the nation voluntarily. However, the NCR of the world today is not necessarily the one it was before. After the death of Tandy, her successors began enacting rapidly expansionist imperialist policies with the aim of expanding their borders as quickly as possible, alienating potential allies, and forging new enemies. It therefore makes sense that they're no longer as popular as they once were. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please feel free to subscribe for more content. Or don't, it's entirely your choice.